You're listening to Beyond Boss Fights, gaming conversations with interesting people. Hello everybody, welcome to Beyond Boss Fights, Episode 7. I am Braxwolf. I'm your host. And today I am joined by the pantless wonder, the master of minions, Layanor, from MMO Reporter, the MMO Reporter Network. Layanor is also a good friend of mine and somebody who gave me a little nudge into podcasting about 6 months ago. In fact, he had a hand in helping me name the podcast, so it was really great to have him on. You know, I'm kind of excited to make it to episode 7 because I've heard some statistics from Libsyn that says that if a podcast makes it to episode 7, they're most likely going to be there for the long run. A lot of times if a podcast is going to pod fade or just kind of stop being produced, it'll make it 3 episodes, 4 episodes, 5 episodes before the creator either decides it's something they don't want to do, something that's too much work for them to do, or they just simply run out of ideas. A lot of times it's easy to kind of stockpile 3 or 4 things you want to say, and then after that it gets a little more difficult. So here I am, hopefully here to stay. Today Layanor and I are going to talk about MMO barriers to entry, and when I say that I mean the things that keep people from playing MMOs, or the things that keep people from coming back to MMOs once they've stopped playing them for a little while. And there's a lot of reasons that somebody may or may not want to try an MMO for the first time. There's a lot of things that are kind of intimidating about MMOs. Those of us who've been playing a while probably don't even realize it anymore, but really it wasn't that long ago that I started playing, so some of these still resonate with me. Talking about things like how much money it costs, first of all. That's probably the forefront of everybody's mind if they've never played an MMO before and they hear they've got to subscribe to play a video game in some cases. Things like fear of rejection from other players. We know about this gamer culture that's out there, but some people probably look at it from the outside and say, that looks like a pretty hostile environment. I'm a little bit tentative to actually put myself into that environment. Some other things that we talk about is the sheer level of commitment that it takes to play an MMO from a time perspective, because to actually enjoy the game and to get the most out of the game, it does take quite a fair amount of time. We also kind of explore some of the things that the industry is trying to do to possibly knock down the barriers to playing MMOs and to broaden the appeal of their product to possibly a more mainstream audience. And although it may not come out so much in the final edit, Layanor also does his best to try and throw me off of my game every now and then. So I've saved most of those occasions for a potential outtakes episode in the future, so be on the lookout for that. And I was certainly happy to have my friend Layanor, with all of his abundance of MMO knowledge and podcasting experience, speaking with me today. So on with the show. And today I have Layanor Leoma, or just Layanor, from MMO Reporter, MMO Reporter, and the MMO Reporter Network. And today he's going to be talking with me a little bit about some of the barriers that we face when trying to play MMOs. But before we get into that, Layanor, welcome to the show.
Hello, minions. We're talking about barriers.
The Minion Master. I was going to introduce you that way, and I forgot. The Minion Master himself.
I jumped in kind of fast. And I want to make sure that you know that I'm because of your show and how much I respect your show, I am wearing shorts.
Are you kidding me? I am truly honored because even in the show notes you wrote, I have no pants.
Yep. I feel a little weird, but I'm doing it.
Well, that's amazing. And this must be the most formal show you've been on in a while. So, before we jump into the topic, would you like to please give the listeners kind of your history of gaming, where you came from, and what you're playing today, and how you got there?
Ooh, history of gaming. Well, I remember, if we're going for full history here, I remember playing the Atari 2600 as my first system. Or no, actually, I think it was a Radio Shack Skeet and Pong system. if you know what that is. You know what that is?
I don't know what that is. I think I started on the 2600.
It was something that just had we called them paddle controllers, which is the dial that you turn left and right as a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And you just play Pong. Most people know what Pong is. But Skeet, you actually had the plastic gun to shoot at your screen. And it wouldn't register all the time, but it worked. And then Atari's 2600 came out, and I played, I think it was the original Pac-Man kind of often. And didn't really play that much after that. Just, like a couple things here and there, whatever your neighbor's friends had. And the big one was always Super Mario Brothers when I got the Nintendo finally.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into a lot of platformers for quite a while.
Did you find that on the Pac-Man on the 2600 was really nothing like the arcade?
Nope.
If you remember right.
Bad. It's totally bad.
Yeah, it was a very different experience. You still played the heck out of it, though, either way.
It was like white and black. Okay, yeah, then I got a Nintendo and played a lot of Mario Brothers, so I got into a lot of platformers. And then, I think it was Street Fighter 2. I was there for the Street Fighter 2 craze, where everybody started fighting in the streets. No, I'm kidding. In Street Fighter 2. Everybody's playing Ken and Ryu and Blanca and all those characters. And I followed that religiously. Every fighting game that came out during that era with Neo Geo and Data East and Jellicoe and all of those fighting games that came out all the way up until until I was about into my 20s. I don't know exactly when, but I was just sitting there collecting them, and I actually got into it's called GameStop now, but there's a company called FuncoLand that was out for a while. I actually got a job selling video games in the mall.
Okay, cool.
Just so I could get those fighting games when they first come out. And then I got into MMOs, and after that died down a bit, people started going over to shooters, and I ended up getting into MMOs. And my first MMO, at least the first one that I remember, is Ragnarok Online, which is a 2D with kind of a 3D background MMO, and it's kind of has the art style of Final Fantasy Tactics to it.
Okay.
So, kind of cartoony. Nothing like EverQuest or anything like that. I never played those. I went from that to Final Fantasy XI, which was the first online Final Fantasy, and played the hell out of that. Now, it was really rough. I'm glad I'm not playing that game anymore.
And that was your first MMO experience?
That was my first major MMO experience with other players, especially pugging, because I was in some guilds. They called them link shells. I was in some guilds, but you really couldn't do anything on your own, and you really couldn't just pair up with somebody either. It was always groups. And you always just had to look around and just see if there was a group huddled in a corner somewhere. It's a very strange game. When I got into Lineage 2 for a little while after that, which felt the same way. The leveling system was pretty much the same. You huddled in a corner with a group. But it was a little bit more lenient. We had let's say everybody's at level 20. If you had a level 12 in your group, all those people, the level 20 people, would get more experience because you're helping somebody that's lower level.
Oh, neat. So
it was kind of neat. It was kind of neat how that system worked. It balanced out. It wasn't so, I don't know, it was just nice. Played World of Warcraft for a little bit. That was during the Burning Crusade era. Too many kids. Too many kids. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to get into nothing. I think I gave up on MMOs for quite a while, and then I got into Lord of the Rings Online. I think that's what happened. And I've been there for 6 years.
So your experience with WoW was basically somewhat negative from a social perspective.
Yes.
more than a gameplay problem with it.
Yes. The game's great. It's fun. It was something that I kind of hid from my friends because one time a friend of mine came over and he's like, "What are you playing? The new Aladdin game?" It's like, oh no. It's very colorful. It's very Disney-esque, but no. So, there was just, the community was just bad. And there are a lot of people that tell me like, oh, you were in the wrong group or wrong guild and stuff like that. Well, I was on there for quite a while. I was on there for like 3 months, I think it was, and I just could not find a good group. You know, I didn't make any friends on that game, unfortunately. And it was fun. It was a fun game. You just run into a lot of people that just screw you over kind of constantly.
It's interesting that we've reached an era where you've got to have both the good gameplay and the good social aspect in order to hang on to players.
After that, not after, I'm still in Lord of the Rings. I played Lord of the Rings for, it's been about 6 years now, and I played it pretty religiously. I did not switch over to very many things at all. I started switching over to different games because I got involved in the MMO Reporter Network, doing Lord of the Rings on Lotro Reporter. And when I started doing news on Lotro, we seen one of the guys leave the network and left a spot open for MMO Reporter. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really doing that much other than playing a game and doing one podcast a week. And I said, well, I could try. You know, I read about, you know, some of the MMOs that are coming out. I have some older experience with some of the Asian MMOs. And he gave me a shot, and then I started branching out after that. So now I'm seeing a lot of MMOs that I like or don't like, or, you know, mm-hmm. I'm out there and reading pretty much everything on everything as much as I can, so I can do news for the show.
So you made kind of an interesting transition here a couple years ago. You went from being a pretty heavy player of video games into podcasting, content creation, streaming, some blogging. Could you kind of tell us how that came about?
Well, I'll start off with when I raised my hand and said I'll do it. Chris and Bill were the main two guys that were on Lotro Reporter. They did it for like a year or 2 years or something like that. And Chris was sick. I don't remember when. I think winter. And Bill came on, and he was just there. And I don't know if he was waiting for Chris to come on or not, but he said that he was either going to do the show alone, or he wasn't going to do the show. And I think I was the only one in the chat room at that point, and I said, well, if you need any help, I can help you out. And I've been in that chat room for not a year. I think I started going to the chat room like 2 months before that point. And I just kept poking at them and making fun of them a lot, and that's why they know my name. And he said, you know what? I might take you up on that.
Like, oh. It's time for revenge.
So I was like, oh, geez, I think he's serious. I mean, I was serious too, but I didn't think that it would go through. I thought that, you know, Chris would show up or whatever, but yeah, he took me up on it. And I got on and I tried to talk as best as I could and, you know, talk about the topics of the day and you know, what news and what kind of opinion to give on something that the game was changed on, and it was hard for me.
On to our main topic.
Women.
Not women.
Oh.
Today we're going to be talking about MMO barriers to entry, and I know I've experienced some of these things, and I think, Layanor, you probably experienced some yourself, being that you didn't start on MMOs either. So you probably, in fact, I think you hit on one of these in your introduction earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking about barriers to entry, what we're talking about is something that makes it difficult for people who never played an MMO before to jump in and start playing, or to jump in and play and understand it and enjoy it. And this first one on the list is something that actually affected me, and probably one of the reasons, along with the fact that I had a very young family for the period of time that MMOs were starting to get big, because I came from a period of time, as did you, Layanor, where you would go out to the store and you would buy a video game, a cartridge or a disc, and you would bring it home and you could play it forever.
Yep.
You know, as long as the cartridge worked and you blew on it a few times, and as long as your system didn't go belly up on you, you could play that game forever. In fact, I've still got a Sega Genesis upstairs that I can play NBA Jams on. You know.
He's on fire.
He's on fire. And so to wrap my mind around the fact that I would not only have to do that to play World of Warcraft without ever trying it before, but I would also have to continue paying every single month for the privilege of playing that game was not something that made any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when you talk about the money aspect of MMOs, it was very difficult to go from one business model to another for those of us who grew up with the pay to play, basically, the buy to play. So, I don't know, did you have a similar response to that when you started looking at MMOs for the first time?
When I first started looking at MMOs for the first time, like I said, my first one was Ragnarok Online, and I was really into Final Fantasy at that time, which were the Super Nintendo games, I believe. I don't even think I had a PlayStation around that time. Not sure. That game, I know it was free. I know it was free at the time, and I think it was kind of like a beta where people could get on and just play it, and it was going for, I want to say that the beta was like going on for a year or something like that. It was finally released, and it was pay to play, and I think I was working 2 jobs at that time, one at a pizza place and one as a greenhouse assistant, and I had the cash. But I didn't want to pay that. I did not want to pay. I don't remember what the price was either, but I did not want to pay that because it seemed like a bill. It seemed like something that I have to pay for along with electricity and a phone and something like that. It just seemed like a bill. And I still kind of have that mentality about that business model now, that pay model now.
Yeah, I can... I think it's probably fair to say that MMOs were the first video games that were really aimed at people that had jobs as opposed to kids of people who had jobs. I can remember quite literally my Nintendo Entertainment System that I bought was something that I saved up all summer for watching somebody's house while they were gone on vacation for a few weeks, right? I mean, I literally was a kid. I couldn't have a job, and the video games that were coming out were aimed at me. Whereas with the MMO world, they kind of expected the people that were going to be consuming this content or this product were going to have jobs and they were going to be able to sustain it long term. So it's just a little bit, it's a real shift in mindset and from a business model perspective. They were going after an entirely different set of demographics than the old days when, you know, the kid delivering papers for the summer could go out and buy himself a video game.
Right. I had a little bit of an extreme purchase. I went to a video game store, and this one guy had a PlayStation hooked up when PlayStation was not in the United States yet, and I had no idea what this thing was. He had it from Japan, and since I was so into fighting games at that time, and Virtual Fighter was really big on the Saturn at that time, there was this one game called Toshinden, which was very fast. It played kind of like a Capcom Street Fighter type game, but it was 3D. And I fell in love with it. Fell in love with that game and that system. And I ended up getting all the money to import a PlayStation, just like this guy did, and imported games from Japan. And this was like $50, $60 games, but with the import prices and them being brand new, this was like $80, $90, $100, you know, a pop. And I was just getting into MMOs at that time, and I thought MMOs were just crazy asking for that monthly fee. But here I am popping out $100 per game. I don't know. The mindset's just crazy. Now that I think about it, it's just wow.
I think since the subscription model came to being, they did fairly well. Obviously, WoW was very successful with it.
Mm-hmm.
Then some WoW clones came along. People throw Lotro in there, and I think that's probably fair. Mm-hmm. I think there's been this constant research by the video game companies to figure out a way to increase that demographic, to actually increase the exposure, to increase the accessibility of their games to folks that maybe aren't in the position to be able to pay a monthly subscription, or maybe money is a barrier to them, and they would otherwise be playing the game and supporting it in some way. So what ways do you think the video game companies have gone about trying to knock down this barrier to entry for people?
I think the biggest example would have been when Guild Wars 2 came out, where I don't know about the younger players, but us older players, you know, the ones that had the Super Nintendos and the PlayStations and all that, where we bought the game and the game was ours. When Guild Wars 2 came out, that was their pay model. It was buy it and then you play forever, you know, for free. And they did that with Guild Wars 1 as well, and that's what made it really successful. But the second one just seems like it just blew everything out of the water with that pay model, and how well that game looked at the time, how awesome it looked, and, you know, up to date and shiny. I think that one really changed the whole game and had a lot of companies look. Was Lord of the Rings Online free to play before or after that game?
Before.
It was before?
Yep.
Okay, that's when Dungeons and Dragons Online did it before, and they seen that it did well then, making it free to play. So then they converted Lord of the Rings to be free to play too, which was pretty big at the time as well. We had the whole Gandalf commercial, "You shall not pay," and they put that commercial in the return of Family Guy, their first episode of the new season. That's cash that, you know, they paid Fox to put their advertisement there.
Yeah.
So that brought in a lot of money for Lord of the Rings Online. That was a really big one. And then Guild Wars 2, oh boy, I tell you, it just knocked everything out of the water at that time. You buy the game, you know, you buy the box and you play. And holy cow, did that work for that company.
I think in some cases, instead of actually changing the business model, they still want you to sub, but the real barrier to entry is people don't get to try it first.
Yes.
And so in some ways, or in some cases, the game companies have actually done things like WoW gives you the first so many levels free to try out, and then make your decision as to whether it's worth a subscription or not. As we know, Lotro does the free-to-play hybrid type model where you can sub, but you don't have to sub.
Yeah, you can buy the game in bits if you want, in parts.
Right. So it's
pretty much.
It seems like altering the business model is kind of a way that they've tried to knock down this money subscription barrier that some people have.
Right.
Another potential cost-related barrier to entering the MMO player market is the demands that it can put on the system. And I have an example of this that I just recently experienced, and that is that I pledged to Star Citizen, and they allowed me to download the hangar module that they've finished. And I don't know if it's completely finished, but it's pretty sweet looking. But I was amazed at how my system, it's not top end anymore, but it's a 6-core AMD processor with I've got a decent graphics card, not top of the line, but just walking around the hangar where the spaceships are was so sluggish. And I started thinking to myself, holy cow, I'm going to have to upgrade my system just for this game.
Well, it could be a couple of things. It could be that, first of all, yes, the game might be that powerful, you know, and that big, you know, taking up all your video RAM and all that, but it could be also that it's made, you know, everything looks really good, And then the cleaners have to come in, the people that take out all of the extra unnecessary stuff that's behind the walls and behind the curtain, and, you know, stuff that's up in the sky that it could be a huge, you know, base for them where they tested out guns and ships and stuff, and they need to delete that, you know. So it could be either one.
I'm hoping that that's part of the issue. Mm-hmm. But in order to make this point, MMOs are many times, this is changing a little bit, many times designed for traditional PCs. Mm-hmm. And traditional PCs are expensive, especially if you have to have a system that has some higher end graphic capability. This is also potentially a barrier for some people. Lotro, a lot of people tend to be able to play because it has, on the lower graphic settings, a lot of ability to kind of dip down into the lower end of the PC specs. But a lot of the newer games that are coming out require a lot more graphic intensive processing and stuff. So that sometimes is difficult for people, for example, in their teenage years or maybe early college years, to procure a system that can even play these games. Have you had any experience with having difficulty being able to run some of the MMOs that are out there?
Not recent ones. When I first got into Lord of the Rings Online, my computer could not handle that game. I got to Moria, and I couldn't walk around in Moria when it was prime time, which was around like 6 to 8 o'clock p.m. I could not move around, could not walk around, and I had to stay up until about midnight, 1 o'clock, for there to be less players for me to actually play. There was somebody that told me a long time ago, I don't remember what we were talking about, I think it was maybe shooters for the PC. The game companies and computer companies kind of scratch each other's back in this kind of a situation where the companies put out higher end graphics and stuff so people buy the stronger video cards and RAM, you know, the stronger computers, and so the industry makes more money and more money and more money all the time, year after year. We don't see very many companies now. I mean, a while ago there were a lot of companies that tried to make games for everybody's Franken-hacked system, you know, with the NVIDIA card and the ATI chip and the Microsoft this and the, you know. Probably around Guild Wars 1, companies were still trying to make games for everything, especially World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft wanted that game to run on everything. Well, I used to joke around that it used to run on toaster ovens. It doesn't take very much to run World of Warcraft. And now it really does seem like you have to have something kind of decent. And if you do, like, go out and buy a computer right now, it's going to be something decent that will play most of this stuff pretty well. But, yeah, I don't see a lot of companies looking back and wanting to run on older stuff.
Another example that I can pull out now, keep in mind, both of my examples are beta products, so it is very possible that they haven't come through and enhanced the performance of those yet and kind of made them more efficient. But when I was in the original, it may have even been, no, it was right after it went beta. It was Landmark. And that game renders a lot of the world right on your computer, I believe, because of the way that the terrain changes and stuff. It was very intensive on my computer, and I was kind of surprised how sluggish that ran as well.
I didn't have very many things running, and I was having problems with that too. I was even live streaming that, and I was rubber banding all over the place. I was mining into the ground, and I wasn't getting anything, and then poof, the whole ground would come up because that's all the stuff that I hit, you know, and now there's a big, huge crater. I was having problems with that too, even without the live streaming. I was having some problems. So yeah, I think that in that case it was the beta and not our computers.
However, I have seen some games come out recently that seem much more lightweight, kind of the Minecraft type, you know, games. Obviously, Minecraft very lightweight. The games that kids especially, but even other people tend to play in the browsers are obviously very lightweight.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's World of Steam, which looks kind of cool and very detailed for a browser game. and that's one of them. Minecraft runs, yeah, in a browser if you want, or you could just download the client. That is kind of nice. I wonder. I've always wondered if you're able to actually play those games on tablets. I think some people do.
Another one that I've tried recently was the Lego minifigures online. I was in the beta for that.
Oh,
just
how was that?
last weekend. It's really a pretty fun game. Now, if you want to read the full review, I've got one on my blog at braxwolf.com. Mm-hmm. And I would say at this point I have almost as many things that aren't fun as are fun, but I think that for a beta it's actually pretty polished. Mm-hmm. And there was some very interesting mechanics to it, and also it was more challenging than I expected it to be. Mm-hmm. So there's several things that I liked about it, and I think it's got a lot of upside.
The game looks awesome. It looks just like the console Lego games, like the Lord of the Rings one and the Indiana Jones one, the Batman one.
I'm always happy to see more quality games for kids that have some MMO characteristics to them. So what we have seen though is that some of the newer MMOs are being designed for consoles as well as PCs. Elder Scrolls Online comes to mind as one of the more recent, but also you've got DC Universe Online and some of those other ones. Seems like there was a debate, not with maybe this generation of the consoles as much, but the previous generation, that people were starting to say, why would I buy a computer to play games when I could go out and spend $300 on a console and get the same type of experience, especially when the consoles do other things like play Blu-rays and stream Netflix and things like that.
Right.
I think what we found is that because of the inability to upgrade the consoles, you don't get quite the same quality experience that you do on a PC. I know my graphics for Skyrim, I've actually got a PS3 version of Skyrim and a PC version, and the PC version graphics are superior. But I think that's one of the ways that they're trying to keep things a little bit more affordable for people, because consoles do tend to be a little bit less expensive than computers, although that gap seems to be closing quite a bit as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, there also used to be the why would I want to play with a keyboard when I have a controller argument, and that's always the PC argument as well. Why do I want to play with just 12 buttons when I have a keyboard? But I think for console players, I think it more comes down to gameplay and speed. And when I mean speed, I mean you pop the game in, you play. You don't go through a menu, you don't go through a window, you don't do, it's boom, you're in, you're out. The Wii is a extremely great example of this. The Wii, just like Nintendo said, it printed money. Mm-hmm. The system was not meant for huge graphics and all the bells and whistles. What they did was they have a huge library of just fun games and a lot of online games as well. And that thing was almost in every kid's bedroom.
You've actually hit on another barrier, though, in that one of the things that people, I think, do complain about, and we hear about this a lot, the attention span of not only the latest generations of people, but even those of us that are from previous generations that have kind of gotten used to this immediate gratification that the internet provides. Mm-hmm. We don't like to sit around and wait for things to happen. Our attention span is so short. That's why people say when you're creating a YouTube video, make sure you tell somebody something in the first 5 seconds, or else they're just going to click off of it, right? Mm-hmm. I think we see this when you're playing games as well. Now, if you buy, say, The Secret World off of Steam, how long do you think it takes before you can actually play that game?
We're talking about download time?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. It does take a little while. A average MMO takes around 2 to 3 hours for most connections and most people. So I know when I was looking into a new MMO or something like that, I knew that I had to have the time to get the game in the first place.
Right.
And that was something I usually did overnight. Like, okay, this looks really cool. I'm going to let it download overnight. So
even a free-to-play game has that barrier to entry if you're going to download it from wherever to play it, if it's a fat client game. So it's one of those things, like you said, you knew it was going to be that way. So you actually planned in advance to have this time to download it overnight or whenever.
Yeah.
Somebody who's new to MMOs might not have that type of expectation set, and they might look at that Steam download and go, 6 hours, forget this, I'm not going to play this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just kind of depends on the player, though, too. I mean, if he's one of those guys that is downloading, I don't know if Call of Duty's on Steam, but, like one of those larger shooter games, those are huge games, so they have to, wait for that to download as well. But to add on to the point that you're making, some of these MMO companies are making it so you can download a little bit of the game and play. I think Lord of the Rings Online tried to do this a while ago, and their client's kind of iffy on it, but it works. Rift, when they went free to play, they changed their client to that. Unless it was like that before, but when I joined up, you could get the first beginning area, and then it would download more as you played.
Yeah, Rift works really well.
Mm-hmm. There was a game that I was playing with my friend today, Atlantica Online. It's an Asian game. It's kind of old, but he got into that pretty quickly. It took about 30 minutes to download the game, and the full client of the game, not the client, the full size of the game was 20 gigs. So, and he has a really slow connection. So that company also thought, okay, here's a chunk, go play, because they don't want to, especially the free-to-play games, they don't want people to sit there for 3 to 6 hours because they're going to stop that. They're going to cancel it, and they're going to go get a faster, cheaper game, not cheaper, a faster, smaller game because they're bored now.
Yeah, I think Star Wars The Old Republic has that system too, that play while it's downloading system. It's pretty slick. I wish more MMOs and even big games would do that. Like I don't know, like you said, a Call of Duty, that maybe they could give you the first mission while they're downloading the rest of them or something like that. That would be pretty cool. The tutorial in the first mission.
Tutorial, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great, or a demo.
Now, you talked in your intro a little bit about the experience you had socially in WoW. I think social is it may be not quite as much now because people are starting to get more used to the social aspects of being online. But I know when I started playing Lord of the Rings Online, part of me wanted to do it because of the social aspect, and part of me really was afraid of the social aspect of the game. I had never really played a game that required me to interact with strangers before, and I didn't know how they would react to me being new to the game, and not just new to the game, but new to MMOs, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't even know any of the terminology. I didn't know how to play my class. I didn't know where to go to buy a horse or anything, all of that newbie stuff. And I was kind of afraid to ask people because you hear these horror stories about the gamer culture, right? And I don't know if it comes from first-person shooters or if it comes from, just people being the way they are online sometimes to people who don't know as much as they do. So for me, there was a bit of a fear of rejection from other players. I kind of had decided when I first started playing Lotro that I was just going to do the whole thing solo. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are aspects of that game that really require you to group up to be able to get through them. Not as much now as there used to be. But what I found is, obviously going along the way, that ironically the social aspect is really what has kept me in the game as long as I've been there. Because I've met a lot of people that, not only in my kinship, but even outside, and you talk about the Lotro players and all these people that I've met, have kept me kind of coming back to the game, even if I'm kind of out of things to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing that keeps you into is the free-to-play. The free-to-play makes the game open for all your friends to just be there whenever they want to. They can come in, come out whenever they want. And if you're on, you'll see somebody, you'll talk to them, that you haven't seen in a long time. And it becomes a very social thing. I used to call Lord of the Rings Online a 30 gig chat room.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I am there in the PvP area because that's where I see people, but I just sit there and I work on things for the network, or I'm playing Hearthstone, or I'm doing something else, and the game is on. If there's messages, I'll read them. it's like a huge chat room. Yeah, when you start getting the social thing in there, that yeah, you're on because you want to talk to other people that you've met, and that's fun. But real quick, I wanted to point out, imagine, and this will take you back. Imagine the people that have been playing Elder Scrolls, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and they want to play the new one. You know, they want to play Elder Scrolls Online. And that's what those people are facing right then too. You know, I'm not used to playing with other people. I'm used to, you know, slaughtering towns and killing monsters and becoming a god out of it. You know, I can shoot fire and I got armor and I have everything in this game because I own the world at this point. And now you got an MMO where you really can't do that much. You have classes, like you said. There's it's like jargon. You have to learn the new terms, and you don't even know that there are terms at that point. You know,
right?
And yeah, you know, there's a large group of people that are going through that right now. And for you and me, from our aspect, we came from console games and just solo player PC games. You know, so it's kind of hard to just get up and go to something big and social like that.
So let me ask you something. When you came from World of Warcraft and you had a poor social experience, what was your mindset going into your next MMO? What were you thinking as far as the social aspect? Did you have expectations at that point, or were you hoping for something better, or had you just decided, you know, I'm just going to kind of ignore the social aspect because it was so bad in my past MMO?
Bingo. I decided I was going to do it all alone. All of it. As far as I could till I was done. I did talk to a little bit of people here and there. You know, I'm thinking about the when I went from World of Warcraft to Lineage 2. I really did not talk to a lot of people in Lineage 2. There's this one quote from a friend of mine. That's not the right area to say this, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway. He had kind of like this problem too, but when something new came out and it was like a year old, you know, like jumping into the secret world after it's been out for a year, he had this really bad problem where if he didn't join a game when it first started up, he had a really bad problem joining the game. And he finally explained it. He said, this is really silly. He says, I feel like when I walk out of town, all the max level players are behind me and they say, don't die, Lovey. Don't die. Oh, that's a close one. Oh, don't die. And I'm like, what? But, you know, from his point, you know, his viewpoint, that's a very different barrier that he had to break to get into something. He got me into Lord of the Rings Online. That's the guy that got me into Lotro. And he played the game very differently. Just one more quick thing on him. When he got all the way to max level in crafting in Lotro, he was done. His character was level 40 something, and I think the cap was 65 at that time. And he said, "What else is there to do?" I was like, "Okay."
Everybody has their own goals in an MMO.
Everybody has their own goals. So yeah, you know, it's a little bit different for everybody. But yeah, I wanted to point that out because that's a different barrier as well.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I think it kind of goes along into this because it's part of it's a social stigma, right?
Yeah, it goes in a little bit. So I was like, well, where do I put the story? But I have to tell it.
Yeah. Did you ever fear rejection from other players, or were you just always, I'm just going to roll with it and whatever happens, happens?
Rejection from other players. What do you mean?
I mean, say you get into a group where you don't know anybody and you're afraid that you mess up. Maybe you make a pull that you weren't supposed to make and you let the group down and either they berate you or they boot you. Did you ever have a fear of that happening?
Oh, I think everybody has that. Especially when they're first starting up, until you become a kin leader and you start kicking people out yourself. Yeah, I think pretty much everybody has that, except for the long term, the diehards. I've had that happen a few times, and I kind of expect it to. You kind of feel it when you walk into a new raid or something like that. You're like, well, I might get kicked out of this one because I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think everybody has felt that at least once.
Is there something that the industry can do to help overcome this kind of mental barrier that people probably have about online games?
I don't think so. I think that even if the game companies would figure out how to just mash us all together into a group, that we still feel that way. A good example is Rift, where a Rift opens up and you auto party everybody that's in the area. There's like 8 or 12 people all just grouped together. And I felt that because I wasn't, I didn't know the game very well, then I'm letting down all these people because I'm in a group and I have to help close this Rift. So even if it's that random, where they just shove all these people together, I still feel that way. So I don't know if they can avoid that or not.
I had a difficult time coming up with an answer to that as well. And the only thought I had was, is there a way that, I know in some games there are actually, I think you talked about this earlier, there are benefits to helping folks that are a lower level than you are. Mm-hmm. And that could be one step towards helping to build a more friendly community. But I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to ease somebody's mind if they've never played a video game before, or an MMO before, where they still mm-hmm. have this stigma in mind.
Mm-hmm. And unless there's something like the old pinball machines, where you pull the thing back and the ball shoots into the pinball, and if you miss hitting it within about 15 seconds and it goes straight down, it gives you another ball really quick.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away the balls, from your counts. Maybe if you're able to go into a raid for the first time, like your first 5 times, 10 times or whatever, and you screw up really bad, but you know that you'll res right away as a learning tool, that might help. But other than that, I can't think of very many other things, and that's pretty far-fetched as well.
You didn't list pinball in your definitive gaming history.
Pinball, Addams Family Machine, love it.
Another thing is another barrier to potential new players is the sheer complexity of MMOs. I know that I was, even when I started playing Lord of the Rings Online and I knew what an MMO was, I still wasn't prepared for the complexity in that game. Mm-hmm. Every time I thought, even in the first 15 or 20 levels, every time I thought I had the game down, a new system was introduced to me. And then I'd have to go, well, you can do this too? I mean, it's cool that I have all these options, but how am I ever going to have time to do all this? Mm-hmm. And I think that can kind of overwhelm people too. Like as soon as you got questing down, they started you on combat. As soon as you got combat down, they started you on crafting. As soon as you got crafting down, they started you on reputation. And mm-hmm. It was kind of like, holy cow, there's a lot of stuff in this game. And which of it should I focus on?
Yeah, I know for me, and I know for pretty much everybody that I've talked to, as soon as you get to the legendary weapons, you just kind of have them until you figure it out later on. Legendary weapons are, in Lord of the Rings Online, at level 50, you get this item, this weapon, and you can switch out all of these things on here for stats and to make your skills better and a couple of other things. And it's not really explained well to you, but it's a new system that you have to suddenly learn as you're leveling. And I know a lot of people just have it. They just have it. The quest will give you a couple things to put on the thing, and you just, I don't know what it does, so I'm going to go put it in there, and I'm going to swing it at things anyway. That's pretty much what a lot of people do when they're brand new to a system.
Yeah, and Lotro is a very good example because I think the longer a game is around, the more potential there is to have more complexity built into it. Mm-hmm. But I think even outside of Lotro, even in a brand new MMO like Elder Scrolls Online or WildStar, MMOs by nature are just very complex beasts. And mm-hmm. it's kind of an overwhelming thing. Like I said, I didn't know what I was supposed to focus on. I thought every time I got something down, it was like a new little distraction over here. I think, oh, well, this is cool. Maybe I should be making my own bows all the time. And, mm-hmm. oh, look at this. I can get reputation so that I can barter for stuff, I wasn't sure, with my limited amount of time, I had to figure out what I wanted to focus on.
Right.
And I didn't want to get away from those other things, because the longer you are away from those things, the more you forget about them.
Yeah, and if those things are important or not, you don't know.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think the complexity scares some people away, especially when they're inundated with all of these systems in the first few levels. Do you think that the game industry is doing anything to reduce the complexity for people?
Heck no. I think that they do a little bit. I think that Lotro used to have a bunch of things in the beginning, but now they just kind of pushed everything back a little bit. You get your cosmetic system like at level 10. You get your skirmish systems at a level 20. I think that they are trying to take systems out from the beginning. You know, like the first 20 levels.
Mm-hmm.
I've played WildStar recently. There was a little bit of a tutorial. There was a couple things here and there, but nothing like a big, huge system that I had to try and learn. Although WildStar does have those systems. What was another example? Guild Wars 2 really doesn't do that either. They just kind of give you a sword and go out there and feed the bears for 2 hours. I think that companies do realize that if something looks very intimidating in the beginning, that people, it's going to be a turnoff, because it kind of makes you feel kind of dumb if you don't know what these things are.
Now, I noticed in a game like Elder Scrolls Online, which I played for several levels as well, they've simplified the combat quite a bit. It's more actiony, yes, but there's also only like 3 or 4 slots on your skill bar where you can actually put your combat attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that it doesn't reduce the amount of systems in the game necessarily, but it does simplify some of the things that you see on the screen, and it simplifies some of the things that the user or the player has to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice it with WildStar. With WildStar, it seemed like there were quite a few slots where you could put skills still.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good point though too. That I think the industry has realized that if you have a huge brick of skills, that people don't get into it too much either. It seems to be like if you have 8 skills on a bar, that's the popular one. Like people get into the system a little bit more. I guess because they have less buttons to click on. I guess.
Yeah.
WildStar has that system. The Secret World has that system. Guild Wars 2 has that system, even though I think it's less than 8 buttons on that game. I think it's around 6. Not sure. It's been a while. Lord of the Rings Online, they had, a huge brick of skills, and then they had a meeting and decided to reduce all the skills down. A lot of games are switching over to that, and to go to a earlier point, that helps out the console systems. The games can transfer over to those console systems later on when there's less buttons like that, less skills on your panel.
Another aspect of complexity that exists in MMOs is this whole idea of different types of play styles. And when I say that, I'm talking about the player versus environment, the questing, the instances, the dungeons, the player versus player, which is obviously players beating up on other players, and even the role play aspect. I mean, I didn't really know what role playing was until I started playing Lord of the Rings Online. Mm-hmm. But that's another way to play the game, that if you get in it and you're in it just for PvE, and all of a sudden you see these people doing Weatherstock, you're going to be like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
What is the goal of this game exactly?
Yeah. First time I seen role playing, I think, was in Lord of the Rings Online. I was on the Landril server, and Egg, and Lotro Players. I think before Lotro Players started up, he had me come over there to act out a kind of cool show real quick. And he got all kinds of people over there and stuff. But I wandered around in the server a little bit, and there was quite a few people in the Prancing Pony that were role-playing. And it was neat to see. Now, I have a friend of mine that told me that, there's a lot of boyfriend-girlfriends and stuff in there.
I did accidentally walk into the wrong room of the Prancing Pony once. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh.
I walked back out pretty quick, though.
Please tell me that they were elves and not hobbits.
I wasn't there long enough to know.
But yeah, to actually see some pretty cool role playing and stuff from the community. I mean, Landryville's just full of that, and I've never seen that on any other MMO that I've been on ever.
I've always wondered if it's a good idea for game companies to focus on one versus the other, because it seems like with the limited number of development resources, it's very, very difficult to do all of these things that an MMO wants to do and do them well.
I don't think a game company can focus on role-playing, though. I mean, it's kind of a player choice.
Well,
I know there's servers on some games that, are declared as role-playing servers, but honestly, I really cannot see how they can enforce that. It's more of a player thing.
It is, but you have to have certain sandbox elements built into your game to make it more feasible. You can't role play in Lego minifigures online.
Why not?
It's because it's so on rails.
But you can role play as a pirate. I'm sure lots of kids do it all the time.
I think kids are gonna. I don't know. You may be right, but I don't. I don't see it. I'm a paintball guy. I don't see my kids necessarily role playing as much as they are just destroying everything on the screen. But
okay, I see.
Along with the complexity, another barrier that we could talk about is just the level of commitment required to play an MMO, and this is something that hits me to this day. When I first started playing Lord of the Rings online, it was fairly sporadic, maybe 2 or 3 nights a week. I was leveling pretty slowly. Then I hit a period in my life where my wife decided she wanted to play too. I showed her kind of how you could create a character, and she thought that was kind of cool. So when we were doing that, we were playing pretty much every night. It was kind of like, okay, are the kids in bed? All right, let's go down and play some Lotro.
Yeah.
And we did that
the patch is out.
Yeah.
We're ordering out. We're not cooking tonight, kids.
We did that for
just let you know.
We did that for almost a year, and now we're at a point where my wife isn't playing quite as much. I've got some real life things going on. I'm spending more time doing community type things than I am actually playing a lot of times. Doing stuff like podcasting, like what I'm doing now, takes up a night a week, and by the time you get through all the stuff you want to do, all of a sudden you realize, I haven't played in 6 days.
Yeah.
The level of commitment to really bring a character from level 1 to level 100 here pretty soon in Lotro is pretty staggering, really. I mean, it takes somebody to sit down and say, yeah, I'm really going to commit to playing this game a certain amount of hours a week if my goal is to reach level 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can be overwhelming for people too when they see how much work it is to actually get from one level to another, especially if they're used to games where the goal is to level, which is a lot of games. A lot of single player games are like that, right?
I think that that is another barrier to just jump onto an MMO and just say, I'm just going to play every once in a while. You really want to get to you want to build your character. And that's pretty much what an MMO is. You want to build your character. You want to, when you really get into it, you want to build the stats. You want to mess with those stats a little bit more. If there's a dungeon that has might or strength that'll give you +2 damage on something, you will go for it. That's the key thing of an MMO is building your character. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. For Lotro, I was playing pretty casually until I got to max level, but after that, and Lotro is pretty much the hardcore MMO that I played hardcore. After that, whenever I did an ult with somebody that really wanted to level with me, I went and got the caffeine. I went and got the coffee. I planned it out. I was like, okay, we're going to hit these levels in these few days, and then these few days, and then these few days, and then we're going to have a max character in 2 weeks. I do that pretty much in other MMOs now because I really don't want to sit and spend the time of leveling a character casually over a months of period
Right.
of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people that are really hardcore into an MMO have a advantage, because if a new game comes out and they all decide that, the group of friends decides that they're going to switch over to another game, they have, their group of friends, and they're going to just dominate through this game when it first comes out. They're going to knock it out within a week. We hear stories, Guild Wars 2, somebody leveled from beginning to max level within like 3 days, I think it was, or 4 days, and they played in a group. So that's pretty hardcore stuff. That also shows how people really don't want to level slow.
Right.
But
even
to make the
even
point,
that fast leveling that you're talking about requires
time.
some commitment, right?
Yeah, it takes time. And I think that's also what I want out of an MMO as well. Even though I feel like I need to rush through it, I don't want to be given it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of strange. I guess if I was given a character, as long as I could go through some dungeons and stuff to just make them a little bit more better and a little bit more gear and stuff like that, if a game had it set up that way, I would probably really like it as well. But if we compare it to something like a MOBA, where the whole MMO is stripped away and all we have is the combat, and maybe a little bit of gear here and there too, I don't have fun with that. And it seems like, everything is gone. It's just the combat. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go back to my old fighting games of Street Fighter 2 and Tekken and stuff like that. Yeah. What do you think?
This is an interesting one to me, because I think this may be the first one we've talked about that these other barriers can be overcome with some level of commitment or time. Complexity you can learn about. Fear of rejection you can get over just by interacting with people. Demands of the system you can get over with either playing on lower settings or upgrading your system. Money can be overcome with some of the industry trends we've talked about. But level of commitment is one that can actually not only cause people to not want to play a game to begin with, but it can cause people who have been playing a game, I think, who suddenly run out of time, to fall away. Because they get to a point where I'm too far behind now. It's going to take too much time, too much commitment to get my character back to where I want it to be. There's not really any point in me going back.
Yes, Guild Wars 2 has that problem, and they're trying to change it right now. Guild Wars 2 had a living story, I think it was called, where new content would come out every month. And it wasn't anything huge, but it also wasn't anything little. And if you didn't play for a couple of weeks and you missed that event, you missed it. Mm-hmm. All you could do was just read about, what the quests were, what the story was, what the gear was. There was an instance open for a little while, it's closed now, and you feel left out. Our friend Harry Hall on MMO Reporter, because he's in journalism and does a lot of writing about games and Apple products and stuff, he doesn't have a lot of time, but he loves that game. He misses out on a lot of those monthly things, and it's been really hard for him to come back into the game because he feels like he missed so much.
It's a barrier to continuing to play.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple more to go through here.
Let's do it.
One of them I don't think is quite as much of an issue now as it used to be. The inability to actually play with your friends. You play an MMO because you want to play with other people, but boy, especially
not necessarily. But for your point, okay.
Oh, here we go again. Go ahead and derail my whole argument before I even say it. But in the older days, when you had to, Lotro has how many servers? I don't even know. Quite a few.
20-something.
How many times have you started playing an MMO or talked one of your friends into playing an MMO, signing up for an MMO, only to figure out that about 10 levels into it, you're on different servers and you can't play together?
Mm-hmm. That's happened.
Oh, it happens it happened to me like two or three times with people that I know in real life.
Yeah.
And even when I told them to go to Winfola, they somehow ended up on Withywindle or something, because nobody listens to me.
Aww. Now you have your own show. Ha.
Touche. But yeah, this whole idea of being able to play with my friends is a difficult one when you're first starting to play MMOs and you're trying to figure out how to get together and do this.
If you're first starting, yeah. Sithrith, who I've met recently, her story when she first came into MMOs, which was Lord of the Rings Online as well. She made a character. She played for about 10, 15 levels, and she really liked the game. Was really into it. Logged out. Next day, logged in. Lost her character.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Where's my elf? Where does she go?" And I don't know how the story ends, but I would assume that she ended up making another character on a different server because she didn't know what servers were.
Yeah, I think that is the case, actually. That's how she ended up on Winfola, too.
Right.
Yeah, and not only at the very beginning, but the other thing is it's very difficult in a lot of games to play with your friends if you are of different levels. If I've been playing for 65 levels and I talk somebody into playing, either I've got to go back and power level them, which kind of robs them of the experience at the beginning, or I've got to roll another tune that's a low level and start all over.
Yep, and I hate that. Oh, I hate that.
It's hard to do, especially when you're used to some of the perks that you've gotten through the leveling process.
Yeah, and then plus, the way that I like to play. I like to be at the main cap level and striving for those extra little tidbit of stats to make my character better. And to just go all the way back to the bottom again, that just kills me. But I've done that. I've wanted to play with my friends, so I just end up forcing them leveling as fast as possible. Get me through this.
Yeah. And depending on the friend, that might be the solution that's best for everybody. But there might be some people that are like, boy, I sure am missing out on a lot here. First of all, I'm not really learning how to play.
Yeah, they're not learning how to play. They're missing out on a lot of content, especially a lot of cool content. And when they finally get to the max level and all that stuff, they feel like the game was too easy and that they've beaten it.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't that much to do except for just go on a couple adventures, that your friends are asking you to do. And when you start repeating those instances over and over and over, which is probably the week that they hit max level, that it kind of turns off a lot of people.
Now, there definitely are some things that the industry is doing to combat this. In most recent games, there are things such as mentoring systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really participated in this, but my understanding is that you get some kind of credit for helping somebody who's a lower level than you.
Mm-hmm.
In Guild Wars 2, I believe they actually down level your character when you go into those lower level zones, so that you actually do get some credit for killing mobs that are way under your level normally.
Yep.
And another thing that I know that Lotro is doing here very recently is they're selling you the ability to auto-level.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy a token that will actually make your character level 50 automatically and also comes with some other virtues and stuff that you would have earned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, their new class is going to start at level 50. They're calling it an advanced class. I don't know that they've done that so that you can play with your friends as much as to reduce their own development complexity. But that is something that's out there now. Have you taken advantage of any of these types of systems in order to play with your friends, or are you just strictly power leveler?
Strictly power leveler. On Lord of the Rings Online, I pretty much stick to my one character and have a lot of fun on that character. I do have some ults, but I hardly ever play them. And they're pretty much just experiment characters anyway. Unless somebody really did bug me and say, hey, come level with me, then I'll go all the way to max level, playing with that person. But other than that, I use my ults to experiment and learn some things about the game that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I pretty much just stick on just one character and I'll go out of my way to help people out and just level them up through content with my main character to help them out if that's what they want.
Along with down leveling, I know that Lord of the Rings Online's epic battle system allows you to up level characters.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another way that you could play with your friends. I don't know that I would really recommend somebody who's at level 10 up leveling to level 95 and playing an epic battle with people. But I'm sure people do it. I'm sure that's one way they get around that systemic issue.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this is as much of an issue now as it was in the past, but there is still some kind of a social stigma that goes along with being a quote-unquote gamer. And this is another thing that I don't know that I really experienced this, but it took me a long time to actually admit that I was a gamer, I think. I know I was playing video games for a long time, but I never really told anybody that I gamed until I started playing MMOs, because that's really what I felt was more the hardcore aspect of gaming. For some reason, I never felt like sitting down at a console and playing the latest version of Madden would really give me any gaming credibility. But nowadays, it seems like that has changed a little bit. I see people refer to themselves as gamers that are playing even the most social of games. So I don't even know if social stigma is quite a thing anymore. Especially considering that geek culture seems to be really gaining more mainstream popularity, and it's a lot of times tied with gaming.
I think gaming is more open than it has been in a long time. I think quite a few things are. A good example that just a couple of things that I've seen. There are guys talk about football at work all the time. They've done this for years, and I've seen that women get into football more, like the last probably like 8-10 years. I've seen that change. I've seen anime when anime first came out here. It was just for the diehard fans that seen the bootleg copies of Dragon Ball Z episodes and Akira, and it just kind of all trickled over, and then it got bigger and bigger, and now we have anime all over the place on TV, and I think they still have Toonami and a couple other channels. And gaming just kind of seems to be in every home. I think that what helped it out was video game systems started to become other things. Music players, CD players, DVD players, computers also started, they always kind of did, but they also have that open media where you can put something in it and you can start watching or playing. And companies, I feel, have just kind of opened up and just made that very broad and made it into everything. You can game on your phone now. It seems to be, and it doesn't seem to be like a just guy kind of thing where, I don't play Madden all the time. I play Street Fighter. I play this, I play that. A lot of women are getting into it too, and a lot of women have the systems, especially, for movies and stuff too. It's almost to the point where people aren't gamers anymore. We're just people, and everybody just games. I mean, you don't hear very many people that say, I'm a movie person. I'm a book guy. Because everybody's watching movies, everybody's reading books, and it just seems like a media that just everybody does now.
Having said that, I think there is still a little bit of a stigma to go along with the hardest of hardcore. I don't know if you saw, this isn't anything necessarily recent because this happens every time there's a big show, but Conan O'Brien filmed a little bit at E3 last week, and his little skits make as much fun of him being ignorant about gaming as they do pointing out some of the ridiculousness that surrounds E3. But I think there still is kind of a segment of the mainstream population that looks at something like E3 with a lot of curiosity because they still they're not a part of that culture and don't necessarily understand it yet.
Well, those are always the bigger games too, the ones that the industry's trying to push at the time. But while these people are watching these shows and stuff like that, they're also playing Candy Crush on their phones and still playing Farmville 2 or something. I know that's an old game. I know. There's newer ones. And Conan O'Brien, come on. I know you play these games.
He does.
I know you do.
Going to try something a little new here. I'm going to go through very briefly some of the things that I've been doing in the last month since the last podcast. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just to catch everybody up on what's been going on with Braxwolf. First of all, I was very fortunate and honored to be invited to participate in Contains Moderate Peril podcast's episode 150, which was a roundtable discussion about the future of MMOs with Roger, who was my guest on the last Beyond Bossfights episode, Brian, his co-host, and the other guests on the roundtable were Joseph from the MMO Troll, Jewel from Healing the Masses, and Sil from MMO Gypsy. I always enjoy talking with other bloggers, whether it be in written form or podcasting form, and I always have a really fun time collaborating with Roger, as you can probably tell. This was a particularly interesting discussion because we hit on so many topics, and unfortunately, because there were so many, we couldn't delve too deeply into any of them, but it was somewhat of an extended episode, and I think it'd be worth checking out if you haven't heard it yet. Once again, congratulations to Roger and Brian on episode 150, coming from somebody on episode 7. I wrote a couple posts on my blog this past month that might be of particular interest. First one garnered a lot of conversation within the gaming blogosphere. I called it Desensitization, From Doom to Slenderman. We had a little episode in the news. I guess it's not a little episode. It was kind of a tragic, sad episode in the news in the United States here in the past month, where a couple of little girls attacked one of their friends, and as the story began to unravel, it became somewhat clear that these girls were obsessed with some of the things on the internet that come out of the horror genre, and of course the media latched onto it. And I didn't focus so much on that episode as much as to kind of pose the question of what video games and the violence that we see in our culture around us does to desensitize the young mind. I don't delve a lot into very controversial subjects, but this one seemed to be taken somewhat controversially. It touched a little bit on genetic versus environment and upbringing. It touched a little bit on the violence in video games, although violence wasn't necessarily the focus I was aiming for. It was also just some of the realism and the twistedness that can be found out there. Having kids myself, I'm fairly sensitive to some of these issues and the difficulty surrounding what your kids should and shouldn't see online, and being able to police that, or at least attempt to explain that to them. Another thing I did was I pledged to Star Citizen. I got myself a cheapest $60 spaceship out there. And along with that, I gained rights to walk around the hangar and look at my ship. So I just quickly taped a little YouTube video and posted it out there, and embedded that in a blog post just in case anybody hasn't seen the hangar for Star Citizen yet. I know I'm probably one of the last ones to even be in the hangar, but it was still fun, and I'm kind of looking forward to what they can do with this game. This month they also announced the winners of the Newbie Blogger Initiative Awards, which is something that I think we all agree is a lot of fun to receive an award, but it was really, we received the most benefit just from participating in the NBI itself. Having said that, I was very pleased at most of the winners. I'd become somewhat close friends to some of them in the course of a month. As close a friend as you can become to somebody you've never met face to face over the course of only a month. But it was fun to see the winners be announced, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the feedback section of the show as well. But I posted an article about this because the awards were announced a day or two after a gaming blogger that some of us were familiar with passed away very unexpectedly. So it was kind of a kind of a trough for the folks that knew him very well, and then kind of a summit to see the awards announced the very next day or within the next couple of days, and that's where I got the title. Kind of contrasting those two experiences and just kind of putting it out there that we kind of need to be able to experience the good with the bad. Another thing that happened this past month was that LEGO Minifigures Online went into open beta. I was actually fortunate enough to get into the closed beta the weekend before, so I had a little bit of a heads up before the mad rush. I went ahead and did a first impressions post about the gameplay mechanics and my impressions of the good and bad of the LEGO Minifigures Online game, and also embedded a little YouTube video of the tutorial for that game. Lastly, the Steam sale was this past month, and I was able to restrain myself fairly well. I only purchased one game, and that was Dragon Age Origins for $7.50. I thought I did pretty well staying away from a lot of games that I don't have time to play anyway. Now moving on to feedback. We don't have any feedback this week, but I did want to take a note and talk about something really quick. As most of you know, I mentioned on my podcast last week, and I think the week before, I participated in the Newbie Blogger Initiative this year. I took the month of May and hit it as hard as I could as far as getting some blog posts out there and socializing with other bloggers and stretching the limits of my abilities to blog and learning some new things along the way. Ooh. Well, I was very, very honored to be awarded the Newbie Blogger Initiative Epic Promising Star Award for 2014.
What?
Which is the highest honor bestowed by the Newbie Blogger Initiative. And I am very, very humbled and thankful to everybody who participated in the MBI with me this year. And I did not expect to win any awards, nor did I really set out to do that. But it was very much a surprise and very much something that I am proud to wear on my site from here on out. So thank you very much for that. If you have any inclination to blog whatsoever, I would highly suggest that you head over to the NBI page, newbiebloggerinitiative.com. They also have forums that people continue to monitor. They're not as heavily trafficked in the months that are outside of the initiative, but there are still people that go in. I pop in a couple times a week. If you'd like to network or if you'd like to ask any questions, there are still people there that are happy to help you out. So thank you for that. And from here on out, I will be referring to Braxwolf.com as the award-winning blog.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. Well done, sir.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it. It was a fun thing to do, and I was very happy to be even associated with the other newbies that were participating this year, because there are some really good ones.
Oh, nice. See, I told you had something. I told you.
So, since we didn't have any feedback, you can send your feedback to braxwolf@gmail.com if you like email. I will read it on the podcast if you wish. This is also a reminder that Beyond Boss Fights is on iTunes, and we would appreciate your ratings and reviews. Those really help other people to discover the podcast, especially if they're interested in gaming and don't know where to go to listen to some of this cool kind of discussion that we have. Mm-hmm. Beyond Boss Fights is also on Stitcher, so add it to your playlists. Also, Stitcher has a review system, and if you rush out right now, you can be the first to leave me a review on Stitcher, because I don't have any yet. I'd love to see one out there.
Fall. Watch your ankle. I lost a sock recently. Have you seen my sock?
Well, it would make sense if it was on Stitcher. Sewing joke, sorry. Layanor, how can people get a hold of you?
They can email me at layanor@mmoreporter.com. I should probably spell that Layanor. I had to look at the spelling. I'm getting old. You can Twitter me at Layanor, of course. You can check out all of the things that I'm doing over at MMO Reporter Network. I do have a blog. I don't really have the address for it right now. You could Google my name, Layanor. There you go. Do it. Do it. And then say hi to Braxwolf, because he's cool.
And as for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Braxwolf, BRAXWOLF. Again, you can email me at braxwolf@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Braxwolf. I'm on YouTube, youtube.com/user/Braxwolf. Or you can visit my award-winning blog at braxwolf.com.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next month.
See ya.